Welcome to Pagan Artist Spotlight, dears, your informative metaphysical podcast catering to all pagans worldwide. We are dedicated to bringing you the very best in music, news, events, and lots of fun stuff. Come join our group on Facebook to keep up to date on what is happening in the community. Now, here is your host, Lou Silverwolf Williams.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pagan Artist Spotlight on the National Pagan Network. And this afternoon, I am joined by not only Edward Scott, who is the founder of today's Witch magazine, also the Pagan Rights Coalition, but I've also got a special guest, Rauncie Reynolds, and she's out of New York. And Rauncie herself, now the reason why I wanted to bring her on is because that with the October edition of today's Witch magazine that's going to be coming out, we wanted to do a special article on death doulas. And Rauncie here is basically she's a pagan chaplain. She's an interfaith hospital chaplain. She's also a high priestess, and also she's also known as a granny goth. So that's the whole reason why we've got her on here today. So I want to take time out and thank you for coming to join us. And then also I need to thank Kiki from Spiral Rhythm for doing the intro for me. I do appreciate Kiki and also the other members of Spiral Rhythm who have also recorded promos for Pagan Artist Spotlight. So get that out of the way. All right, let's get right into it here. Rauncie, I know that we had talked earlier on the phone. We'd also talked online before this. And just kind of give us a brief synopsis as to how you, basically with your background that you have, your work history, and what got you on your spiritual path.
Okay, so, and are you talking about in relation to the death work that I do?
Yep.
Okay, so, well, first of all, I will share that I am 63 years old, and I first became interested in paganism when I was 12, and actually a little bit younger than that, but I really started, trying to practice at the age of 12. I am a high priestess. I've been a high priestess for over 25 years. I am a pagan chaplain at a university, and as you said, I also do chaplain work as an interfaith chaplain. I recently finished a CPE unit, and CPE is clinical pastoral education, which was really interesting because I was the only pagan. So that was, an interesting path. But what led me to the death work, when I was in my 30s, I worked for a hospice, and I had always been interested in doing this kind of work. It really introduced me to, what hospice does. I think people have some misconceptions about hospice. And I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of my life. So for me, the death work is integrated into everything that I do, because as a high priestess, I serve my community. So I may be called to the bedside of someone who is dying. And as a chaplain, working with a hospital, I definitely am doing that a lot. Mm-hmm. So, the hospice experience, my personal experience in my community, and I really like midwife of the soul for myself, because I'm also a trained birth doula. So I do, when a child is born and when we pass from this life.
So you're handling pretty much the full aspect here.
Right.
From birth to all the way to end of life.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I think is important is it's not just the person who's dying that you're working with, you're also working with the family and friends and those who are around them.
I was just about to ask you myself about the actual work of a death doula is basically, if I'm not mistaken, is like a hospice nurse, basically handling all the final affairs of a person, making sure that their wishes are met and that they're comfortable upon their dying, nearing their dying days. Is that correct?
So the thing about being a midwife of the soul or a death doula is that what we do is we provide guidance, support, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, as well as some practical things. We don't do anything medical. That is not part of, unless you are a hospice nurse who is doing death doula work, because some nurses do that. But what we are there to do is to provide that support, and also to help with things like rites and rituals, like talking to the person who is passing, talking to the family. What kind of rite or ritual would you like to have? Do you want something happening when you are passing over? Like, I have been with people in the pagan community who would like to be sung home. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I'm sure you have. You're pagans, to be, to have people there from their coven, from their family, singing songs that matter to them. Or I've brought in musicians to play music. But I want to say, I feel like the biggest piece is being there to listen, to be a witness, to be that compassionate person who is not only listening to the person who is dying, but listening to the family. What do you need? What can I do? Sometimes it might be, I'm going to walk the dog, because the family needs a little bit of respite. But we do have a different role than nurses, nurse aides, medical professionals.
Well, that's why I was asking in particular about that, because I know, like, a death doula trainer that I spoke to earlier, okay, she had mentioned that, they provide hospice care, they provide end of life counseling and stuff like this for the families, and like you just said, for the families and for the person who is passing. And all sorts of other things like that. So I was wondering, if you could be, having the specifics on what the death doula does is important, because people have a lot of misconceptions on what it actually is to be a death doula and stuff like that, and people don't have the knowledge, and this is what we're trying to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and there is something else that's really important for me to share, and that is there is no governing body in the US that says these are the requirements for you to be a death doula. Now, I think it's important for people. So I'm a little different because I started out doing this work when I was much younger, and I have a lot of life experience. But I think for someone who is right now saying, you know what, I'd really like to do that, I think it's important to, find a certificate program. Now, is it required? No, it's not, but it's going to help you, find a good certificate program. Some death doulas or midwives of the soul are specialists in certain areas. I would say that I definitely am a pagan specialist, though I can work with people of all different faiths and religions. I was not raised pagan. I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, and I had Pentecostal grandparents. So, I can work with different kinds of people if they want to work with me, is what I would say to that.
And I know that there is a huge difference between being a actual midwife to a trained medical professional.
That is correct. Yeah.
Because myself, I'm also in the medical profession. I've been doing it since the late 80s, even though I work out in the field. I definitely know that there is a difference. Now, to some people who they don't understand the terminology or concept of a death doula, but when you explain it to them as you being a midwife, um, I think people would relate to that a lot more because they know and understand what a midwife is.
Right. And I always say midwife of the soul,
Mm-hmm.
so that, and then I go on to explain this is not a medical thing. I have a quote from the International End of Life Doula Association. Um, I'd like to read that because it I think really kind of lets you know what it is. Um, to help restore sacredness to dying, provide respite to exhausted caregivers, bring deep meaning to the dying experience, and prepare people for the last breaths of their loved ones. And that comes directly from the International End of Life Doula Association. That's really in a nutshell what we do. Now, are there things outside of that? Yes, you might, after the person dies, help a family member to find a place to have the funeral. Maybe they don't want to have a regular funeral home. Maybe they're pagan and they would like to do something else. And so when I said that I feel like I'm a specialist in that area, I also am an officiant.
Mm-hmm.
I help people to plan memorial services. I do ritual for pagans when it comes to the end of life. So,
Excellent. Well, I know that as a minister myself, I mean, I think I've I think I've catered to more weddings than I've only done one funeral in my time spent in the pagan community, and that was just doing the sermon and yeah, pretty much handling that aspect because I got asked to do it. But you've got, I totally respect what you're doing.
so I will say that as far as doing funerals, that is something that I've done a lot of weddings. I still do a lot of weddings. But I also am well known as someone who does end of life and funerals for people who would like something alternative.
Right.
Because it's not just pagans. I happen to have a friend who is in the funeral industry. She is, at one point, she was the youngest funeral director in the state of New York. She lives here in Rochester, where I'm from. And I do get phone calls saying, hey, Rauncie, we have this family. They would like something different. Would you like to work with them? And what I do is I talk to the family. What do you want to do? I've done things as far as like someone who was able to make arrangements so they could take the casket in the back of his truck. Someone who had their ashes put in the gas tank of their motorcycle. Things that, and working with a funeral director who's able to do these things, and having really meaningful ceremonies for people that are outside of, what we're used to when we go to a funeral. It's a really fulfilling thing. I love doing that, being able to talk to people about what do you really want, I think the thing that makes me the most upset is when I go to a friend's funeral and I know for a fact it's not what they would have wanted, So it's
Yeah,
something I try to do.
I know what you mean. Is getting to have a play in my dad's funeral. Because I know damn well that if Dad would have had it his way, he would have built his own coffin out of plywood and been done with it. And so they'll say when it came to pick out the coffin, I mean, we went to the funeral home and I was looking for the cheapest one possible. And with nothing fancy, just plain basic. And I thought I did good with picking out the right one. And So I
I
know
don't know.
darn well that basically if Dad would have had it his way, it would have been a lot different. But
And what state are you all in?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
yep,
Are you
and
in
I'm in
Pennsylvania?
Iowa.
You're in Iowa. So in New York, and actually really close to me because I used to live in Ithaca, New York, there is a natural burial place. And I have two friends that are buried there where they don't have to, be buried with all these requirements that a lot of other places have. So just being put in the ground without being embalmed in, a pine box, or other options. So that's really nice to have that close by.
This is one of the things I was just about to ask you. Other than maintaining the rights of making sure the family is also satisfied with the way the final passing is, because like a lot of us in the pagan community realize that the cycle of life and death is just that. It's a cycle where we continue, our souls continue on. So we accept our deaths equally pretty well. But the funerals are more or less for the family members.
That's right.
More than they are for the actual person who is dying, because the funeral is for the still living.
Okay, I've got a question here. She wants to know: have you dealt with the green burials under the sapling?
Yeah. So as I was saying, there is a green burial place here near me in Ithaca, New York, and all those things are possible here. I have, as I said, I've had two friends that are actually there. And, it's not something that I personally set up, but I have been a part of. So, yeah, it depends on your state laws. You have to look into those things. And that is, that is part of, things that I've done is look into these things, do your research, find out what is possible, what is not possible where you live. Pretty much gone are the days that when people could bury somebody in their backyard. People used to do it a long time ago. I don't recommend it because you're probably going to get in big trouble. You have to make sure that what your laws are in the area. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now, I asked about an open pyre the one time because the fact that that's what I wanted to go by traditional Celtic standards. And the only place I could found that I could actually do that, because the state of Pennsylvania does not allow it, right, would be in Montana or some other place like that where it's Native American lands where it's still permitted to do so.
So are you talking about where the sky burials where they put you up?
Yeah. On a pyre and.
Yep.
Oh, you're talking about the pyre where they burn you. Yeah. Okay. So I am not positive about this, but I'm going to look into it after we get off here. But I think that a person can have what's considered a sky burial at the natural place that I'm talking about in Ithaca, which is where your body is put really up high and just allowed to the birds, yeah. So in Wisconsin, sky burials, I'm pretty sure you can do that at the Ithaca one, but I'm not absolutely positive. So I don't know anybody that's done that. So
yeah, because basically Wisconsin has got a very large reservation area, and which. Let's see, which also extends into the northern part of Minnesota too, if I recall right. But I can understand why they allow that there.
Right.
I also follow Native American practices myself.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure here. It's something I would look into. I've never had anybody ask me for that.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is the importance that the death doula has, is to be able to look into that and help the families decide and get the best wishes of the last wishes of the person who is dying.
Absolutely.
To be able to fulfill the expectations, like you said to your friend. You knew that one person did not die go the way they wanted to, but or was it not their wishes? And that I've seen frequently.
Right. Yeah, I think it's so important. And I want to say that I feel really blessed that I have connections with someone, the woman that I was talking about, who is in the funeral industry, who is a pagan and who, works with me. If I have a question, I'm like, do you know? And she will find out, can we do this? And she's always willing to do everything she can to accommodate what people would like to have. You have this look on your face. Wow. That is interesting.
Yeah. This is our friend, Melissa Anderson, and she is on it.
That is really interesting.
Yeah. She says that mummification is also available in Minnesota, but not the 60-day. Okay, Melissa. Okay. Is there a difference here? That's new to me. I did not know that.
I'm not at all surprised about it because I go to Paganicon in Minneapolis, and what is it they call Minneapolis Paganistan, because there's so many pagans.
Yeah, they've got that as well, but Paganicon is the big one every year in March.
Yep, I go. I love it. So I'm not surprised to see that something like mummification is okay there, because there are a lot of pagans out there that are probably pushing for things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Okay, now I'm going to put up your other social media here for those of you who might be interested. You can also find Rauncie on Instagram, which is I_am_Granny Goth.
Yep, that's me, Granny Goth. And for any of the people who know me as that, greetings, baby bats and friends. That's my how I start my TikTok. And also, I do have a website, Rauncie.org.
Oh, Rauncie.org?
Yeah,
okay.
Rauncie.org. That has a bunch of stuff that I do. I'm a tarot reader. I do a lot of stuff. So
very cool. All right. So now, let's see what else we got coming up here. Here we go. She just answered my question. Comedic mummification is 60 days. In their process, it's 14, and where the organs are not removed. And she did a complete article a few years back on different pagan burials. Cool.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so something just learned something new. Thank you there, Melissa.
Me too. I'd like to read that article. I'm gonna have to connect with this person.
Yeah, it's just Melissa Anderson on Facebook,
and she's Witches Brew Magazine is her magazine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I would love to connect with all of these people, especially being the pagan chaplain at a major university. We have a large student group, and I think it's good to have connections with all of you, because I would like you to also speak to my students.
I'd be happy to one of these days be able to do that. Hopefully, we can make some arrangements in the future. I can get up to Ithaca and actually make a public appearance.
Awesome. Well, so I'm in Rochester. My daughter is in Ithaca, and she's also a practicing pagan. But I have lots of connections in Ithaca still, lots of friends there. I lived there the first 8 years I was in New York.
Well,
being in Pennsylvania, I'm close,
Yeah, that's very close.
And with what I'm doing as a basically pagan minister, media rep, podcaster, I'd be happy to talk with students as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. it's great to make all these connections for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. She'd be very happy to connect with you.
Awesome. Yeah. And just, we were talking about different life passage rituals. In addition, you talked about weddings. Not long ago, a couple that I married was featured in Rock and Roll Bride magazine. So I was in there as part of that. I did a wedding for a Viking themed wedding. And so, yeah, that was pretty cool.
I've actually had to do a traditional Norse Viking wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a solid month to learn the traditional ceremony.
Oh, that's really cool.
I invested that much time into it to make sure that, that I was doing everything by the book.
Yep.
The family had, I guess, most of the relatives who were there basically followed traditional Norse religion. And after I got done, they all pay me highly respect that I followed their traditions to the point.
That's wonderful.
That made me happy.
Yeah, I always, when I do weddings too, I work with the family. What do you want? Let's do this together. So important.
Yeah. I still remember the day that I was getting ready to perform a wedding ceremony, and a member of the family came up to me, asked me if I did funerals. I'm like, you picked a hell of a day to ask me that.
Right.
It really threw me off my game because it was right before this ceremony. I'm like, now you did. Now I had to go off and refocus because that just totally threw me off my game that day. It's like
maybe they thought their wedding was their funeral.
Oh no. Well, I do think it's really important for, life passage rituals, and especially with funerals, that people know they have an option. I think people, a lot of times they just don't think that there's any options except for what we've been used to. And there are so many things that we can do, differently.
And especially when you're working with the family, especially in their home. Yes, and most time it is at the request of basically the person and who is requested to go home,
right,
and to be with family. And I mean, to most people, I don't think they really think about that. But when you're asked to be with the family at the home and to help them with making arrangements, to walking the dog, to just doing what you can to help the family deal with what's happening. And that plays such an important role, and a lot more than I know that when it comes to patients and families in hospitals, there's always miscommunication. I've dealt with medical professionals in hospitals, and they lack the empathy. I'm sorry, but they just lack the empathy of what the family wants.
Yeah, and I think that's that's a good point of, a lot of times what someone like I do is to be that in-between person who can advocate for the person who's dying, advocate for the family, and to say, it's really important for you to understand that the family really wants this, that, the person who is dying really wants this. I want to see what these...
Yeah, she just buried her mother in February.
Okay. Yeah, I'm there with you, Melissa. My mom died a year ago in June. And, even though I've been doing this work for many, many years, that was a hard one for me because, um, what my mom wanted in the end, not all of that was, and not for lack of me trying to help. Um, it was rough. It was rough. You're right. They're for the living. They are for the living. But the actual process of dying, my mom did not necessarily get what she wanted, which was to not be kept as long as possible. Even though my sister and I were fighting for that, let her go. Type of thing. We wanted our mom to go into hospice. And the most comforting thing for me was the day that my mother passed, was talking to a hospice nurse who said, finally, the agreement has come that, yes, your mom will be given what she needs so that she can pass peacefully. And that was so, healing for my heart, to know that she passed peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a question concerning hospice care and the concerns of death doulas, because pagans are more naturalist in our beliefs and everything, as opposed to medically connected. So, in regards to a lot of hospices, I know will, try to make comfort to the person as best they can, but they also medicinally provide them pain relief and stuff like that, and non-natural ways, opiates, etc., where the person doesn't necessarily die peacefully. They don't even know they're dying until they're dead.
Right. So,
that's the medical that does that. I'm saying in the position of a doula, right? Do you have a job as a counselor for the living that's dying, the dying person, okay, into easing them to their death?
So,
being more proactive in that regard, like Melissa just asked.
right. Yeah. So the thing about as a doula, it really is just being there for support. All of these things are explained to the person who is dying, and when you go into hospice, you understand that a big part of what they do is to make you comfortable as you're dying. But you make those choices. You can say, I don't want to have this medication. I don't want to do this part of it. That's up to you when you are with hospice. But that is what hospice does. Hospice provides you with an easier death, a good death, as they call it. It's up to you, whether you want to do that or not. I want to say there is a misconception that hospice is coming in there to kill someone. I've had people say that to me, aren't they just like overdosing you? And I'm going to say no to that. That's not what it's about. They are allowing a person to relax. Yes, you have to be proactive. I'm going to agree with Melissa on this.
Well, that's what I was asking, because it was told me that sometimes that, it's more or less is medicate the person to make them comfortable until they die. And that's, and that's not, to me, that's not a proactive response. That's a more negative
right.
thing to do. And where psychological counseling, emotional counseling, comforting them in that regards, helping them recognize that their passing is, in regards to their passing as part of the cycle of life, etc., and to make them comfortable in doing so. I mean, isn't that the job of a doula too?
Absolutely. The education of it, talking about the cycle of life and, what is going to happen to your body, as you are passing over. That's part of what a doula does. Again, we don't do medical things, but talking about, as a pagan. So I was called in once to help a family who was releasing a child who had been hooked up to, all these things that were keeping the child alive. And my job as a doula was to sit with mom and dad and talk about the cycle of life. They were pagans, you know, this is a natural thing, to release the child from all of these things that were basically just keeping the body going, but knowing the fact that once these things are taken away, this is a natural process. The child will stop breathing, but this is natural. What you're seeing right now, that machine is just making the lungs, continue. And that's not a natural process. But, that was a hard one, being with mom and dad and saying, I'll stay here with you, and you can see your child take this natural process, because it is the natural cycle of life. We are born, we die, and that
We borrow this mortal vehicle from which to learn and grow.
right. Absolutely. And it's hard as a parent sometimes, or a daughter, or a son, or a father, to, when you're in that space, it's part of the job of the doula is to remind them that this isn't a natural process that we're going through. Yeah.
So like Earl said, that a lot of medical professionals don't lack that empathy, and the doula is there to provide the empathy that's lacking. And
Right. Yeah, to listen about their fears, to listen to what they're feeling, the emotional side of it. That's a big part of what you are there for, to be a witness to what they're feeling, and to be empathetic. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is well, like I said, I've had many experiences dealing with hospital staff and seeing these professionals who, like you said, they come off lacking the empathy, because
they see it every day and they get clinical. They become clinical about it.
Right.
And I mean, I know the feeling of being clinical, because like in one of my instances, I had to bury two of my street kids that I mentored. I mentored 60 street kids, and they got into a car accident, and I had to go identify the body of one of them, and then I had to keep 60 other street kids from losing their losing their stuff, so I had to provide counseling for 60 other kids while maintaining my own balance of self. So being a doula is not for everybody.
Right.
Right. It really is. And it's the same way with working out in the field as an EMT. Everyone is not cut out for that either.
Right.
As an EMT, yeah, you're also dealing with death.
Mm-hmm.
There are times that you're dealing with, I mean, it could be instantaneous. It could wind up being where, yeah, you're having to call in family to be there. Calling in spiritual people to be there. And yeah, I mean, I have seen colleagues of mine freeze up because it hit too close to home. So yeah, it's being a midwife of the soul or being an EMT. Yeah, it's not for everybody, because you have to have the empathy, you have to have the ability to help support people, to show compassion.
Yeah, and I want to say that in doing this work, that there are times that part of what I do as a high priestess, because these are all intertwined, a high priestess, a chaplain, a midwife of the soul, a doula, all these things, intersect. And sometimes I am also there helping the professional, the nurse, the EMT, the person who is also hurting, because, as you say, it hits close to home. The nurse who, I stood with, doing work with a little tiny baby, and this nurse who was really having a hard time, also providing that work for her as well. She wanted to be a part of a last prayer for this child. And I was able to, I carry this book with me that, is full of all kinds of readings and prayers for children, adults, whoever, family members. And I was able to read something that not only was for this child that passed, but also for that nurse to, she was touched as well. That's hard work for them as well. So yes, there are those who have become more out of touch because, it just is everyday work. But then there are those who every day are in the trenches, their hearts are hurting. So we're there for them as well. Absolutely. Reinforcing their belief system and assuring them of the natural process. That's a big part of what we do.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then even to assist them in putting together a ritual based on their own beliefs to ease the pains of loss. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to be in touch with what do they need? What do they need? Absolutely.
Well, I honor and respect the work that you do as a doula. I really do. It's I was told the term doula means servant.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And actually, the original, I looked up the original, what that word meant was slave.
Right.
Of course, we see that in a different way, but as a doula, as a high priestess, I feel like the root of it is serving our community. We are there to serve people. We are there to give, and to be there for them. It's not about us, it's about them. Yeah.
That's very true. It's not about us. It's about the person. It's about their family.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Rauncie, I appreciate you taking time out to join us this afternoon. And I hope we stay in touch because I have a feeling that there's a lot more that we could talk about and possibly even do another session together.
I would love that. I would love to get together and talk about what it's like to be a chaplain at a university. I have stories.
I'd love to hear some more of those too. I mean, having to do another interview with you in the future for the magazine too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like I said, yes, we covered the topic of doulas in this one because of the magazine itself is the silent issue. But I'd like to get some more insight on some of the other things that we do as pagan high priests and high priestess and elders, and how we feel about the pagan community and stuff like that. So there'll be another interview, I'm sure.
That would be wonderful. And thank you so much to both of you. Thank you, Earl, for getting in touch with me. Thank you, Edward, for, this is wonderful. What you're doing, the work you're doing is great.
Well, when Ed posed the question to me about this, I'm like, no problem, I'm on it. And I pretty much put out the request the same day. And I had response from you, and then also had response from somebody else, but I've lost touch with her. So it's like, okay, we'll just go this route. So
awesome.
I appreciate it.
Could I read? I wanted to read a really short something that, we are born as children upon the earth. Thus, as children, we return to it. You will go on to be cleansed again by the rain's cooling bath, to listen to lullabies stirring on the wind, to nestle close with siblings in the den, beneath the thick blanket of summer grass your mother made for you. Be at peace now as you hear your own name stir upon the wind, as the ancient sea embraces the young river, so the earth embraces you, steady and strong of spirit, to play again and dream again, a child within the earth's arms. Blessed be.
Nice.
And something I was going to share with everybody here, seeing how the topic that we're talking about, when I first came when I first received my ordination back in 2009 and decided that, yes, I was going to be a minister in the pagan community, I was gifted this book.
I have that book. It's wonderful.
And, this is really, when it's come to getting asked about certain rituals and a lot of other things, this book has been, I keep this book close by.
I have another one that I would share with you, and this is, Do I Have to Wear Black? Rituals, Customs, and Funerary Etiquette for Modern Pagans. This is a really, really good one as well.
Yep. But so for everybody else, the book I was talking about, The Pagan Book of Living and Dying, that's by Starhawk. And, Starhawk is very knowledgeable in her own right. And she's written several books and just full of knowledge. This is one book I keep close by.
It's a great one. And Starhawk is an amazing person.
Yep, that she is. Okay, and let's see. You got one last comment from Melissa here. It's an important topic, especially for high priests and priestesses. And more training needs to be done because that is one of the duties.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
Govern myself. It is, I've had that responsibility of having to be, there for living and dying. Same, and suffering of the living that are still living because of the dying. So, I've done the work myself. As a high priest, I have, that obligation. So I understand all too well. Melissa's absolutely correct. We need more training in it.
I will totally agree with you. In the tradition that I was trained in, which takes 4 years to become a high priestess or a high priest, the final year, there is the focus on death. There is the focus on the work of the crone and the sage. And, death is something we need to talk about more. I agree.
Okay. Well, Rauncie, thank you again for coming to join us. And definitely please stay in touch because I know that we're going to be able to talk a lot more later on and do another session together. And like I said, be more than happy to talk with students and just to increase everybody's knowledge.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's been my privilege to be with you here today.
You are very welcome. All right. You've been listening to another edition of Pagan Artist Spotlight on the National Pagan Network. And also want to thank Ed for coming to join me this afternoon. And this interview is going to be transcribed and put into the next edition of today's Witch Magazine, which is going to be the Samhain edition. So be sure to watch for that coming out. And if you have any questions, you can reach me directly at info.paganartistspotlight@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with Rauncie directly through her Facebook. You can also contact her through Instagram. And there's her link again, Instagram.com/I_am_Granny Goth. And she also has her own website. Give that to us again.
Rauncie.org. You can contact me through there as well. And I'm on TikTok, Granny Goth.
Granny Goth on TikTok. There we go. And you can also, Ed, you want to tell people how they can get in touch with you and through the for the magazine?
Okay, if you wish to get a hold of us for the magazine, you can get a hold of todayswitch.net. You can also contact us at todayswitch.net. We are the only monthly magazine currently in print for paganism, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
The rest, notwithstanding the rest of them are quarterlies or semi-annuals. We're monthly, and we also, like I said, I look forward to future. If you need to contact the Pagans' Rights Coalition, it's prcupcc.org.
And if there are any pagan authors or writers out there who are interested in submitting articles to Today's Witch, make sure to get those to editor at todayswitch.net.
Todayswitch.net, yep.
All right. With that, we're going to say pleasant journeys, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you to Melissa for participating with us as well.
Mm-hmm.
She is full of knowledge, and I'm always happy to have her be a part of the show as well. So with that, have a good one, and stay tuned for additional interviews coming up in the future. Have a great day. We are going to be out of here.
Thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. All shows are recorded and available for viewing on our YouTube page. All rights are reserved and may not be replayed or reproduced without written permission by NBN management. Come join us at our new group Pagan Artist Spotlight on Facebook, where you can be kept up to date for future broadcasts. Pleasant journeys, everyone.